Hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel, and happy almost Halloween! We are just back from trunk-or-treating, as you might have figured out. We did a Mario theme. This was my daughter's request. I am Maria. My daughter was Princess Peach, as you might have guessed, and my husband went as Luigi, complete with a little pillow stuffed in his stomach. I was not that committed. I am still wearing a dress. Yeah, this is kind of a homemade edition. Our town starts Halloween about 3 weeks beforehand. Not like Salem or Sleepy Hollow level, but we are kind of like at least Stars Hollow level when it comes to Halloween here. My father-in-law used to be the chainsaw guy. Anyway, in this video, I will be reviewing the books that I read to complete my Wild Druid calling. Yes, I also realized that I made a mistake. You're not allowed to double up on books, but I did some incredible readathon gymnastics using the new points system where you can take your old guild points and buy all sorts of crazy certificates to make books count for more than once due to all kinds of extensions. I will be talking about the extra books that I added to complete the entire readathon in the next video. Does this mean that my Spookopathon read also started super late? Will I finish those reads? We'll find out. But let's get into the books, shall we? You know I'm matching another outfit, but we still had to go a little Halloween-y. So for Wild Druid, or Wild Form Druid, excuse me, I did need animal studies. I did those spells already for Beastmaster, and I'm going to cover more books in the next video that helped take care of those. So the first book that I had to read was for the Art of Illusion, and I needed to learn the spell for image generation, and I used a random emoji generator, and I got the Aquarius sign. For that one, I chose The Call of the Sea by Kate Schumacher. This is the Grail Cycle 1. This is a really unique Arthurian legend retelling. It takes place in this world where they know that there is magic, but it has recently been outlawed due to this like religious uprising, and the town is super uptight. No magic, no loving the same sex, no kissing or anything before marriage or anything promiscuous, and you better be praying multiple hours a day. We're talking that kind of society. It's Handmaid's Tale. It's old Puritan ways. You get the general picture. And Guinevere happens to live in this society with her sister, and her sister is kind of super pure and pious, by the way. Super fun roommate there. But Guinevere, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, she has magical powers, and you don't want this in this society. This is not great for her. But she happens to meet this guy named Ortez Merlini. I'll just let you guess which role he's playing in the Arthurian legend here. He has a pirate ship that's hanging out off the coast. Most of the town makes their living from being fisher people. This is like a fisher people town and kind of a piratey seafaring take on Arthurian legend, which is why I said it was pretty darn unique. He sort of is training her to use her magic a little bit, but this leads her to getting into a sticky situation where she winds up getting engaged and married to a guy she does not want. She does not want this marriage. She does not want this life. Then we have Arthur, who also is getting pushed into a life he does not want. He is going to become the next like chief or chieftain. That's who his daddy is. And he's being forced to like pray 1,000,000 hours a day, and he's absolutely miserable, largely in part due to the fact that he does not really want to get married because he doesn't like girls. Yeah, no, you can't do that in this society, okay? It's not fun. He's literally watching them pull in magical creatures who are now considered to be abomination against the earth because they just shouldn't exist, heaven forbid, and they're getting like, you know, annihilated in the town square, and that could happen to him if anyone finds out he harbors same-sex feelings. So everyone's kind of miserable so far in the book, and they all wind up fleeing on board this wonderful pirate ship. That's really all the summary gives you. You've got a lot of parallels to like the Inquisition, the Salem witch trials. You're getting all those vibes. Honestly, it felt a little like Da Vinci Code with some of the stuff we were seeing with Silas and his belt and like all the like self-flagellation, and like there's a lot of that going on in here, which I didn't necessarily need to see, but okay, we're gonna push real hard for the like intensity of the religious hellscape, basically. And it did make for a really interesting setting because we have this very visible real world magic with magical creatures, and yet they're denying magic, saying it doesn't exist, it can't exist, it is an abomination and is an affront to their god, and they're trying to destroy any vestiges of it that they find. It's a really interesting setting for a legend that we know is going to be filled with magic. What an idea. But the book itself ended up feeling very, very average. I just felt like I was constantly waiting. The setup's really fun. We see the ship and it's called the Excalibur, and I'm like, oh my god, this is going to be so exciting. This is going to be so much fun. But constantly I just felt like the author was trying way too hard to make things super original. And I don't think she had to try that hard. Like, you created a really interesting world, yet I felt like there was this constant need to make sure she was still doing more stuff that you haven't seen yet. There's always this like, but my real name is, that happens so many times in this book. And like, I hate to tell the author, it's never the shock you think it is. Like, if I saw it coming, I'm pretty sure everyone reading the book kind of saw it coming, because we all know Arthurian legend. There are only so many roles that these characters are going to fill, and at this point we know based on how they're acting and how they're reacting to others and with whom they are interacting, who they're going to be and how their situations are going to play out. Like, you could hear the dun dun dun, and it wasn't a dun dun dun. So that was a bummer. Honestly, the book was just, it was just average. The writing wasn't extra special. The characters weren't extra special. I was expecting a lot more for the book, and I think maybe this was just like the big setup. For me, I was just waiting and waiting and waiting and watching the author build this like really extreme world, which is fine. But I think honestly the author should have probably condensed this book and continued on with whatever the second book in the Grail cycle is, because I just felt unsatisfied when I reached the end of it. Honestly, it was unmemorable. I don't think this is one I'm going to continue on with. I just really am not invested enough in the story or the characters to feel the need to go on with the Grail cycle. Oh, I'm sorry. It was 3 stars. It wasn't bad. It was nothing special. And neither was that review. Let's hope I get into the swing of things now. Good God. After this, I had to learn also in the Art of Illusion the false target spell, and for this I had to read a prequel. So this is the book I chose to kind of match my outfit to today. Not looking amazing on camera. It looked good in person, I swear. But this is the second book in the Flesh and Fire series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is like the prequel series to her Blood and Ash series, and I think the prequel series is so much better. The prequel series is kind of the origin story of where all of her characters came from. It's very like Hades and Persephone coded, and it's about this girl who is meant to sort of be this consort to a god, and she has like this terrible family, okay? So when he doesn't show up, she's like super mistreated, and then he shows up and rescues her and goes back. But she's also been trained like her whole life to take a dagger to him, because they believe he is the reason their entire country is having this like horrible blight, and they believe that if she gets rid of him, and she will absolutely be destroyed if she does. P.S. They are more than happy to sacrifice her though, for the good of the kingdom. They think the blight will end and everything will be fine. That's the first book. And in the second book, we are continuing on, and I can't tell you anything that happens in the second book because it would spoil everything. But I'm really enjoying this series. I think it's a lot of fun. Yes, it's Jennifer L. Armentrout. Like, the rating is never going to be, oh my god, so amazing. But there is a lot of work to be done between the two characters after what happened in the first book. And like, sure, she drags it out a little bit, but like, the smut's pretty good. I'm really enjoying what she's doing with the secondary characters. There's a whole like pantheon of gods, a la like, you know, ancient Greece. And I'm really enjoying watching them, seeing them interact. There's a lot of like political machinations going on and all kinds of things where she's really taking the time to create this whole world of how you have to act around certain gods and who has these alliances. And there's a history behind all of them. I'm just having a really good time with it. I'm loving watching his friends, and it's very like Rhysand in ACOTAR, how like he's supposed to be like this evil god of death, right? But he is the one who's like the most humane and shows softness and really cares about the people in his court, and the other gods can be the most like cruel and fae-like, I guess I would say. I'm just having a really good time with it. I did fly through this book. You fly through JLA books. I mean, there's such easy reads. Yes, they tend to be long. This was like over 500 pages, but it's a good, fun, easy breezy, kind of smutty time, and I will definitely be continuing on with the series because it's just fun. And I really do think these are better than their first series, probably because she has so much more experience as a writer. But I love the fact that she's going back and writing the own lore for her own world, and all of the origin stories for her own lore, and how like her world came to be. I love that. I think it's great. This was a total win for me. Was it 5 stars? Like, no. But it might have hit 4 stars. I enjoyed it that much. I really did. Pretty involved, honestly. It's also pretty predictable, but sometimes those make for comfort reads, and Did I need comfort last month? Oh, yes, I did. Next up, I had to take a class in astronomy, and I learned a constellation spell, the cradle spell specifically. So I had to read a book that was released in my birth month, and I picked Apprentice to the Villain. Now, last year I read Assistant to the Villain, which is about Evie, and she sort of bumps into the villain and treats him like a normal human being and winds up being his assistant. And I was a little disappointed in this book because I felt like if you would watch the original TikToks, it was less about their office antics and like incredible like close proximity, chemistry, enemies to lovers, not even enemies to lovers, like office romance. Then it was like this whole drama about like a mole in the office setting up the story, like getting to know all the characters, creating her world kind of thing. So I was kind of bummed. I only gave it 3 stars. But Apprentice to the Villain, Hannah Nicole Marin, this was definitely what I wanted. I was so happy. This was so much funnier, so much better. I think the author found her footing, found her voice, found her writing style. I got the office hijinks that I wanted. I got the setup to the funny meetings, the funny office memos. At one point, a guy is about to be like in a bad position and have things done to him. He's like on a table. And meanwhile, the villain and Evie are just standing outside the door of the room he's in, arguing, okay, just arguing, yelling back and forth, sniping at each other. And after a while, he's like, are you two done yet? Are you gonna do anything to me? And they're both just like, can you be quiet? We're busy. Like, stuff like that. It was so funny. You saw like inter-office memos, but the inter-office memos were like, what to do if there's a corpse thrown across your desk in the middle of the day? Like, it's very tongue-in-cheek, very, very funny. It's not gory at all. Like, the author could have made it, but she didn't. It was super funny. We had all those close proximity moments, like, now that she's the apprentice, the villain's kind of like training her in how to fight, and they're having those like moments up close together, and like their lips are right there, they're like tackled on the ground together, like everything I wanted in the first book, it was in this book. We are continuing the story from the first book. There is this whole overarching story involving Evie and her family and how she came to be in the magic in the world, and the villain and his family, and what's going on with all of that, and the entire kingdom is kind of in peril, and the villain is sort of against the king. There's that too. Our delightful frog Kingsley is back, holding up his hilarious signs in the background, being sarcastic and snarky at everyone and making every situation a little more embarrassing for everyone. It was just so fun and funny. And like, is it the best thing in the world? No, the overarching plot, I'm like not invested in at all. But thankfully, I had all the moments that I wanted with Evie and the villain, and we have side office romances now. We've got all those little like water cooler moments I wanted, only there's like dragons involved instead of water coolers. And it's great. Now I'm into it. Now I'm loving it. Now I'm happy. Yay. After this, I had to study restoration. The first spell was the one that let me read The Starless Sea. I now have a favorite book. After this, it was Dangerous Plants. I got disappointed by the run on the Holly Library, which is such a shame, but I'm continuing on because the ending got really good, really interesting. Love Celtic mythology. Now I'm hooked. Definitely ended on a cliffhanger, and I'm really excited to see where that book is going. It just really took its time getting there. After that, I had to learn a new spell, which was Quick Action in a Crisis, and the title had to have a verb in it. For this, I read Farida Abike Ayumire's Where Sleeping Girls Lie. Now, I loved Ace of Spades with my whole heart. I was so shocked at the ending of that book. I thought it was so well written. I was so surprised. I loved like the different narrative voices. I was just like blown away by that YA dark academia. So when I picked this book up, I was like, yes, another one. This is about a girl whose entire family died. Her dad just died. So she's enrolled at this boarding school. She's always been homeschooled before now. And it's this very prestigious school, and it's a little weird, little mysterious. The very first night she's there, her roommate goes missing. And so suddenly everyone's noticing her, including this group of girls called the Unholy Trinity. Think Mean Girls, you got it, good, you're there. And she's like kind of eyeing up one of them, and one of them's kind of eyeing up her. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden it's like, why does nobody care that my roommate has gone missing? Like, this is really weird. Like, no one's gonna invest. No one cares. Okay, my new bestie, Baz, who's also really good friends with her, we're gonna investigate if no one else is gonna. Cool? No one cares. Okay. Guess it's just us. That's the plot at Alfred Nobel Academy. I figured there was going to be so much more to this book, but there wasn't. That was it. Last year I read a book called People Like Us. by Dana Mealy, I think it was. And the books read so similarly. This felt like Groundhog's Day. This was better written and much more interesting and intricate in a lot of ways to a certain extent. And there were definitely some like Me Too things going on. But I expected so much more. And what was really interesting is that apparently the author sold both this book and Ace of Spades to her publisher at the exact same time. And I would bet anything that this book was written first. And I think what I missed was that the first book had multiple points of view that we were reading from. We were reading from a boy and a girl, and they both had really different backgrounds, narrative voices, and very different things going on. In this book, we get one point of view, and it just felt so much more straightforward than I was expecting to. There was just nothing that really set it apart from another darkish academia thriller. It really read kind of straightforward. Like, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I kept waiting for my mouth to really fall open. The writing was great. She's a great writer. No one can say anything about that. I think she had a lot of fun pulling out certain references to like Mean Girls and things like that, but my mind wasn't blown and I was waiting for it to be, and I think there was a moment where it was supposed to be, but by that point I had this so hyped up in my head that it fell flat. It's a good read, it's a solid read, it's a solid dark academia thriller, and it's really well written, but I was not impressed. If you've read Ace of Spades, forget that author wrote this, and you'll probably enjoy it a lot more because my expectations were so sky high. And if you haven't read Ace of Spades, try reading this first and then Ace of Spades, and maybe then like you'll love this and then love the next one. I don't know. I think my expectations just were way too high for this book. It was good. It was really good. It might even be 4 stars, like objectively. I was waiting for that 5-star. Oh my god, this thriller just like, oh my goodness. And the twist in this didn't do it for me. But maybe it will for you. So always take my opinion with a grain of salt. After this, I had studied shapeshifting, and the first spell I needed to learn for this was inanimate objects. How to turn myself into a piece of jewelry. I chose a crown. So I read Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. This is the sequel to One Dark Window, which I'm pretty sure I gave 4 stars. So this is an interesting one. This is about a girl who lives in a world where magic is controlled mostly by the royals, shocking. And it's frowned upon to have your own magic because the only way you can get your own magic is by getting sick as a child, and it's completely unpredictable how that magic is going to manifest in you. So basically you are eliminated. Elspeth's family decides that they want to keep her around after this happens. So they hide her and hide that she was ever sick, and now she has a nightmare living in her head that she can talk to. And when she's in bad situations, she can let him take over and be really strong and like hurt people for her. So, you know, that's what this book is about, and also her like meeting some very important people. And we learn in this world that the magic system's basically run by like, they're kind of like tarot cards. You tap them on, tap them off, and as they get more powerful, they get more rare until the top one, there's only one, and you have to unite all the cards if you want to get rid of this mist in the world. And there's one card no one's ever seen, no one knows where it is, and there's this poem about how to find it. I really enjoyed this book. She has a couple potential love interests, one in particular, of course. We get to know the characters, we meet the princes, we're now part of watching who's going to take the throne next, that kind of thing. It's a great, really unique, really special world. The writing is good, it is dark, it is autumnal, it is creepy, it's very hard magic system, so the rules are very clear, although I did feel like there are certain exceptions in this book. Well, they all get explained in this book. This book was fantastic. Any little loopholes, any little anomalies that I was like frowning at in book 1, they all got cleared up here. They all got explained. The world was expanded, and you got to understand how the cards came to be, why they came to be, how they function, and if there are loopholes, why there are loopholes, how those loopholes work, why they work. The cards that seem maybe not so important, oh, they're so important, and they have more functions than we thought. And like the riddles and poems, they get expanded upon, and in between each chapter, you see a little more about the world because you see something from that world. It might be another children's nursery rhyme or an excerpt from a book that's really important. The whole world becomes so incredibly rich in this book. The magic system is just so fully unique and developed. I ate this book up. What I thought I was going to hate and I was so worried about is we kind of lose Elspeth, who I was telling you about was the main character, as the main narrator. We did have other people narrating in the first book. We're not just like thrown to the wolves. It isn't this sudden shocking thing, but we have mostly other people narrating this book. This is how you switch voices. This was done so masterfully. I could not believe that I was eating it up, learning to love other characters as much as I loved Elspeth and becoming as attached to them. Every character was so well thought out, so unique. Everything was explained. Sometimes with duologies, I just feel like they're a little too short. It's not enough. And I want to love duologies so badly because I think it's a great length for fantasy series, but it's hard to pull them off. And this was fantastic. I don't know if it was 5 stars or not. It did make me cry. That usually bumps things up when I can get that emotional. Parts of it felt a little slow and I was a little invested in, so I don't know if it was like perfect enough to get 5 stars or the duology was quite perfect enough to get 5 stars, but definitely read it this time of year. The atmosphere was great, the writing was great. If you're someone who's tired of the romantasy and is like, I want to see the fantasy first and foremost, I think this is a good duology for you. This is definitely far more about the world building and the story and even the character development than it is about the romance. So yeah, perfect read for this time of year. After this, I had to read, oh my god, this was the worst one. I had to read Celestial Influence on Shapeshifting, a planet name in the title. Okay, do you know how long it took me to remember Earth as a planet? Far too long. Far too long for someone who considers herself to be a remotely intelligent being. Oh my god. I was originally going to read The Children of Earth and Sky for this one, but then my library loan finally came through on Libby for The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride, and I was like, I think I'm literally reading nothing but fantasy this month. Maybe this will be a nice change. Wow, this is kind of an intense read. So I'm glad I started it out on audio because A, the narrator is just unbelievably fantastic, and also I was pronouncing everything in this book wrong my whole life, and I never would pronounce any of the names correctly that I hadn't heard, and seeing it written down. So I do suggest at least starting with the audiobook. I was intrigued right from the beginning. Like, it starts off and there was this massive hurricane and this entire neighborhood is destroyed and a dead body is found, like, in a well. And now there's like a murder investigation, even though this dead body had clearly been there for a very, very long time. And that's how the book opens. And I'm like, well, I'm hooked. The skeleton is found in this neighborhood, Chicken Hill, and we go back in time and learn that it was like really pretty dilapidated, and it's where Jews and blacks were both living together at the time, and they were both very much like frowned upon, shall we say, by the rest of the town. So they were kind of like on their own together, which was an interesting kind of culture clash in and of itself, in a way. But even the Jews who were from different cultural backgrounds, like Russia or Poland or whatever, even they had their own like little inner squabbles. So it was a vibrant, interesting neighborhood, I'll put it that way. In the beginning, the two main characters were Moishe and Shona. Shona is the one who's sort of helping run the Heaven and Earth grocery store, and Moishe opens the town's first like dance hall. It's really sweet, and you hear the names of these like old-timey famous performers, which was really fun. But for every great moment, there's a really heartbreaking moment in the story, and things kind of come to a head when there is a little black boy who's deaf in the neighborhood. The equivalent of basically social services. The state comes and they want to come and collect him. And while they hide him for a while, eventually he's taken away, and we see his experience in an institution. And you don't want to be in an institution back then. We're talking in the 30s. Here, institutions then were not a pretty place, especially when you're deaf and you really can't advocate for yourself. And when Dodo first goes in, he has a broken leg and he's just kind of in shock and cannot communicate, and he befriends a boy next to him who has what we find as cerebral palsy and cannot communicate mostly with others until they form their own sort of sign language, at least. And it's at times a really difficult, heartbreaking read, and you see people band together and do everything they can for one another, but you also see the effects of the American healthcare system, and it's Christian white America. Okay, if you're Jewish, if you're Black, everyone's gonna form a circle, and if you're on the outside of it, good freaking luck. It is ultimately about this small community coming together, risking everything for one another, and how their love and a united front can kind of overcome the cold indifference of the other. Oh man, this was a really powerful read. I knew it was going to be a more serious read, but I was expecting a little more like there's murder mystery, a little more slice of life, a little more historical fiction. I didn't know it was going to be as heartbreaking of a read as it was. So I went in wholly unprepared for what it was and for how sad so many of the vignettes were going to be. The writing was also unique and distinct. James McBride very much has his own voice, and the characters very much had their own voices. The dialogue was extremely true, I think, to the different characters. It was so well done. You really felt like you were in another time. So this was definitely 5 stars. Ultimately, I think this is a story of hope, thankfully, and love and community. But reading it at this particular moment where we're watching the rise of, Christian nationalism again, and watching the division of my own community. Like right now, okay, my neighbors right down the street, they're having a political sign battle. And it's funny watching every day them put out more flags and more opposing yard signs, like Harris versus Trump. And it's kind of funny watching them fill these giant suburban lawns with these yard signs, and then seeing online forums, someone stole my Trump sign, someone stole my Harris sign. If our own communities are so divided, it's books like this that remind me, if I'm scared, how must others feel? Yeah, I'm a booktuber, and some people are probably really not going to like the fact that I'm making this political, but reading this book is political. Reading is political. Writing is political. There is no way you can get around politics right now. There's no way you can get around politics in certain books. And I think ultimately what was so interesting was even the Jews showed division, and how their different backgrounds made them look down on one another just for being from different countries. But when it came down to the community of Chicken Hill, when one of them needed help, they all came together. And I hope so much this current generation of Americans can manage anything remotely close to this. And the final spell I needed to learn was navigation after transformation. Oh my god. Could I use some sort of navigation spell in real life? Because I have no sense of direction whatsoever. I had to read a book with a compass on the cover, and it turned out that this was the perfect time of year to read Emily Wilde's map of the Otherlands, because it starts in September. It starts when she is at the beginning of her school year. She is a professor, and it was perfect timing. I was so excited to read this. So if you're unfamiliar with Emily Wilde by Heather Fawcett, I would be shocked at this point, but it is about a professor who, in the first book, she is writing an encyclopedia of fairies, and she's just finishing it up. She's going to this really cold part of the world where they have fae that are unique to it, and she's trying to write them all down. And lo and behold, when she goes up there, Wendell Bambleby, her sort of arch nemesis academic rival, shows up. He's very handsome and very personable, unlike her, who has a little trouble connecting with the locals because she just isn't great with people, okay? She's great with her dog, Shadow. We love Shadow, but not great with people. But of course, they're living in this guest cabin, not scandalously. There's other students there. It's semi-close proximity. And of course, at this point, there are feels involved. So I gave the first book 5 stars. I'm giving this 5 stars too. I think this is just a 5-star series for me. I love the world so much. Could the fae be a little less vicious? Yes. This is your old-timey fae folk who are gonna trick you and make you eat gross stuff and trap you in their world and do not eat or drink anything there. Don't even touch anything there, okay? Just don't talk to anyone. Just don't go there, in fact. Just stay away. But other than that, it's great. The characters are great. I love watching Emily and Wendell and her dog Shadow. And this time we had 2 new characters, her niece and another academic who's above her, go off when she announces she's going to be trying to create a map of the other realms. Like, that's her new project. I think every book is going to be her writing a book and creating a project based around the Fae. And I was like, are maps going to be as interesting? Yeah, doorways to other worlds, they're interesting, it turns out. Coolest doorway ever we get to see. P.S. Just letting you know. I was a little like, oh no, their romance. Like, I can see Heather Fawcett trying to like put a stop and make it last as long as possible, but it makes sense in the book, and weirdly I wasn't as annoyed by it as I thought I was going to be, because Emily is very standing and proprietary. Okay, this takes place like in the early part of the 1900s. Like, she is not one who would be making out and like doing anything with a guy she wasn't married to. She's very upstanding and prim and proper. So all that made sense, and I can understand why Heather Fawcett doesn't want them to like immediately get married. She wants the tension to carry on. It was well done enough that I'm like, okay with it, shockingly. I know. Because you know what? I want this series to go on for as long as possible, so that's fine. That's fine. Let it keep going. I also thought I was going to be bugged by having other people sort of become characters in the book and have to deal with them constantly like interfering with Emily and Wendell, but I ended up liking them. They were entertaining and they added something to the story, which I am very surprised to be saying as well. I think I just love this world. It's written out as Emily's journal entries, so you're getting all the dates, and it's written in like this kind of scholarly tone, so when she's going and like describing things in great detail, it makes sense that she would describe that copse of rocks in the way that she does. It makes sense that she would be noting down every little thing that she could remember about a specific type of fae, because that's what she's interested in, and everything about the book is great. I love the tone, I love the writing style, I love that academic sense that you're getting from it, but it's about fae, so it's also completely enchanting. The only thing I was like, don't you dare, is she's mentioning her dog Shadow's getting old, and I was like, no, you may not. He's fine. He's still fine. Precious Shadow. Okay, you leave him alone. But yeah, totally 5 stars. I think every time I enter this world, I'm just going to be in love and happy. The writing's great, the tone is great, the characters are great, everything about the world's great. The more we see of the Fae world, the more elaborate it gets, the more I love it. We get to see old characters we loved. Everything was just 5 star, 5 star, 5 star, 5 star. I was a happy camper. But that's it for me today. I hope your town is also providing you with all kinds of fun festivities. If you made it to the end of the video, tell me in the comments what your favorite Halloween activity, or your favorite Halloween movie is, or your favorite Halloween read. I know I'm a book channel, but I'm nosy. I want to know it all. In the meantime, that's all for me. I'll let you get back to your book, and I'll be getting back to mine. I'm finishing off the very last of the super Halloween-y books because I am in super denial, and I'm totally convinced I'm going to put out like 3 videos before Halloween so I can talk to you about the most Halloween-y of the Spookoplathon books. We're going to call it optimism, my eternal optimism that some of you have just come to love. Lie to me so much. I'll see you next time. Bye.